crying out in the wilderness. Speaking of voices crying out in the wilderness. So we've got John the Baptist in the wilderness, and he's creating this alternative form of community, that the people of Israel are living under the control of the Roman Empire. They are told to want what the empire can provide. The Roman Empire can give them social status, prestige, wealth, position, if they just play by the rules. And on the other hand, if they don't play by the rules, they run the risk of punishment. I mean, of the fate that we see John the Baptist coming to in our reading today, and the fate that Jesus himself will ultimately face. What John the Baptist is doing out there in the wilderness is telling people to opt out, to hit that unsubscribe button, to leave that whole system behind. That what is true, what is most meaningful in life is not what the Roman Empire and authorities can provide them, but is a meaningful, significant relationship with their God, a true expression of themselves, and a deep connection to one another. That is what the wilderness had to offer them. That was what drove John the Baptist out. And that's what makes him so dangerous to Herod, to Herodias, to the Roman authorities. And this is not, it's not just the fate that John the Baptist faced. It's been the fate of prophets in every age. Think of the Martin Luther King Jr.'s, think of the Mohandas Gandhis, that it seems like those who called people out created alternative communities following a different way than the dominant systems around them, always faced risk. And yet what kept them going was this deep and profound sense that there was a truth out there more important than their own physical safety, than what it was that the powers that be could provide to them. I think here today, this shocking story of the death of John the Baptist should remind us of what it is that the church could and should be about. The church is not about reducing people to wealth or status, to the things that the empire can provide. The church's mission is simply to welcome people as they are, the fullness of their selves, no matter what they can spend, what they can afford, who they are, where they've been, what they've done in their lives, what their background is, what their gender, race, sexual orientation is. The church's mission is to welcome all, to provide that alternative community where people can find the fullness of themselves able to be expressed. Earlier this week, I was working on planning a funeral for Sean Starkey. Jessica and Hopper and Joyce are here with us today. And in that process, I was so struck by the vision of what the church should be, that it was a story of, Hopper, you were baptized in this very space. Early on in your life, you began your life in this church in a significant way. And Jessica, you and Sean were married in this space. And I'm sure so many others have stories of significant life events that took place here. Think about that. This is a space that is meant to hold, it's a container for all of those major transitions. Birth, baptism, confirmation, marriage, and death. All of them happen right here. We're able to express and be our full selves in this space. It's not just a slice of our life. It's not just this kind of minute community we belong to that can kind of fit into one compartment of our life, but is meant to hold the fullness of our lives. And I think at its best, that's what the church can and should be. That is what this community is about. And I think is the true form of community that John the Baptist was calling people to in the wilderness, to find something so meaningful that they're willing to attach their whole lives to it, not just to encounter God in one dip into the River Jordan, but to encounter God through the whole of their lives. That was what Jesus' ministry was all about, telling people to turn towards God, not just to catch one minute glimpse once in their life, but to orient their whole lives towards God. As I think about what church as a community is and can be, I think it offers such a different vision than the versions of community that we're sold elsewhere. And I can't help but think that today, in this age, when church attendance is at an all-time low, that this space, this community, this faith that we hold on to still has something to offer the world. A version of vision of community that matters, that is significant. And so today, as we're gathered back in this space for the first time in a long time, I invite you to reflect on why it is that you're here. What brought you back today? Why give up a significant part of your Sunday morning to come here when you could stay at home, when you could find community elsewhere, some kind of community? Why here? Why church? What do we have to offer you? What do we have to offer the Durham and wider Seacoast community? What do we have to offer the world? I don't know that I have the answers, and I think those are questions we should always be asking ourselves, constantly reevaluating, thinking, how are we adding value to one another's lives and to the community as a whole? Why is it that we participate in this thing that John the Baptist was willing to die for? This faith, this sense of God's presence in our lives that he believed had ultimate meaning, enough to give up everything for. What does community mean to you? And how is God calling us to embody that sense of community in a more deeper, more profound, and more true way? I don't have answers to these questions, but I would just like to say that I am so excited to be on the journey with you. I'm so glad to be able to ask those questions alongside you, to be there for you in those points in your life, points of joy, of sorrow, of new beginnings, of endings, of hope and despair. To me, that's the stuff that matters the most. Amen.